Good morning. It's 5:30 and we're on the job site. And welcome to the first edition of Joe on the Job Site. And my very first guest is Phil Davis. He and I have known each other for years. Welcome, Phil. How are
Well,
you
thanks
doing
for
this
having
morning?
me. It was nice. The yard looked real clean out there. Great looking job site.
Well, if you keep them clean, you keep them safe. That's half of
Absolutely.
the battle
That's
right
half the
there.
battle.
So, how many years you been in this industry? I know I've worked with you off and on for at least 20, 30 years.
I've got 47 years in the business. I came out of high school and tried a year of junior college, and then my friends were driving nails, and I decided that's where I needed to be too, and started with a hammer in my hand. Well, started carrying lumber as a grunt, and I always wanted to be the guy that was the next up in front of me. And that's how I carried it all the way through my career.
So how did you make it from the grunt up to superintendent? What'd you do to get those little stepping stones?
I think the biggest thing was I was very good at math. My mother was a school teacher, so math to me was secondary. So I understood everything there was about carpentry and about building things and layout and
It's all
things like
math.
that. It's all about math. If you could understand that. So I went from carrying lumber to laying out trusses and laying out hip roofs and being able to do that, laying out floors from blueprints, understanding how to read a blueprint, and then always wanted to be my boss's boss. I just kept working my way up.
Worked your way up, earned it time by time,
Yep.
experience job by job.
Came out of residential construction after about 12, 13 years. My first commercial job was a small bank, and I got on that as an assistant foreman, I think it was. But I was a grunt again, but I was in a different level, a whole
Yeah,
different
yeah.
atmosphere. And then once we got into commercial, the the work just came along and it got bigger and bigger. So
What do you think helped your career path the most as you're coming up through it? Did you have someone of significance that took you under his wing? Did you have a person that wanted to see you grow and specialized and taught you things? Because in my experience in the field, I've run as I grew up and came up as a carpenter like you, I had guys that wouldn't teach you anything because they didn't want you to take their job.
oh yeah, well it was a little bit different than that. I think the biggest driving force was I had a wife and two kids. I wanted to make more money. That was the driver.
Family.
And to make more money, you had to take more responsibility. So I was never afraid of taking on a job. I loved a good challenge. Was never second thoughts about should I do this. Whenever I got the opportunity to move up and be promoted, I always took it. And then once we got into big construction, big commercial, motels and things like that, um, I think a lot of it was personality. I was able to keep everybody playing well in the sandbox, making sure everybody knew what they were doing, feed them materials, and always look ahead, always look at the next step. What do I need tomorrow? What do I need to do today so tomorrow will go good?
Yep.
More
Looking
than anything.
ahead,
Yes.
long range, short range planning and
And
stuff.
that goes back to being a carpenter. I saw earlier on the biggest thing was to be prepared for the next step. I've got two guys up there nailing plywood. Well, they're going to need another piece of plywood, so I got to make sure they got a piece of plywood coming up. Or cutting rafters. I was always two rafters ahead. I'd hand them one, go cut another one, hand them one. So as long as you kept them busy, you were efficient, and it looked good to your boss and the people on the job. So
Yeah. So you mentioned starting in the commercial end. What was one of your first jobs that you looked at on your own and had to figure out what to do? How to
probably
stage the job?
I built a as a real superintendent, I built a stick frame 2-story motel on a creek over in St. Petersburg. And that opened my eyes to a lot of things. First time I'd ever seen pilings driven. Um, we were there, and the old guy that was running the crane, and he was doing all the concrete. He picked up a 40-foot, 10 by 10 concrete piling, and they lifted it up, set it right where it was supposed to be, and started lowering it down. And it disappeared. Poof. I said, "Does that happen often?" "If we hope not." But I think that was the first real challenge that I had. And I learned a lot off of that. Again, it goes back to being able to coordinate everybody in a logistical manner, in a good sequence, so everybody was going to make their money. That was the biggest thing. It's what I told everybody through my career. I'm here to make money. I'm getting a paycheck. You're here to make money. I want to help you make the money that you're supposed to make as a
Right.
subcontractor.
Right.
And I'll do anything I can to help you. But somewhere along the line, I'm going to need a little help back. And I always got that.
Yeah.
And it always worked for
Communication.
me. Absolutely.
Just keep
And
the
building relationships with your subcontractors.
Yeah, I found out that you'll do a job sometimes and help a guy out. One of the most common things I always liked was you'd be framing the interior and the concrete and the stub ups to the concrete. The electrician or the plumber might miss it by half an inch. You could okay, dude, chip it out and move it. Or all right, look, there's no harm in it. The bathroom's not going to be challenged. I'm not impacting furniture or any other finishes. I'm going to have them move the wall over a half an inch for you so you can get with it and not have to do the work.
Absolutely. Be
And
adaptable.
yeah, and
And
those guys will remember you on the next job that you'll play and help them. And that's a good thing.
and that first job is where I truly learned about RFIs, submittals. I mean, it was a real big project. And the architect told me early on, if you send me an RFI, send me a solution
Yep.
or an option, a couple of options. So I always made sure that if I had a problem, I could figure it out with some help maybe, but being able to present that RFI with an answer, and 9 times out of 10, they would go with what you came up with.
Yeah.
And you could keep the job going. You weren't held up.
Yeah, that's one of the lessons I learned about RFIs years ago was you have a challenge, you have a problem, you have a headache. We don't always know the answer, but when we talk to the guys in the field and say, "What do you think? What can we do? What are our options?" You might hear 3 or 4 different
Exactly.
variations, and you sort them through. You get the one that works the best, and that's the one you send in. They're happy to do it. The owner's happy that we vetted it and just didn't throw money at it to make it go away.
Yep. And another big thing along that line was always to be thinking about with that option. I don't say that the tile we were supposed to use was unavailable. Well, I'm not going to pick something from Italy. I'm going to pick something readily available. I
Right.
know we can get tomorrow, and that's the option you throw at them. So you always give them something that's viable.
And you think about that, RFIs, and then you get into submittals. One of the jobs a superintendent has to do is be very familiar with the submittals. What parts, what pieces, when they come and how we getting them, when do they do, what's the RO we want to hold, what's our installation method, how does it fit in the wall, what can we do without having to wait on them getting here? That's another part of the process that you shake out by looking ahead in the project.
Absolutely. And that goes back to starting out with the plans. You got to know those plans better than anybody out there. The first thing that on a project, I would always go through the plans page by page, detail by detail. I would highlight the details that I didn't understand. And I always knew somebody I could call, a plumber, electrician, or something, and say, can you explain this to me a little bit? So when you get into the actual construction process, you have a full understanding of how everything goes. And that really played true when we started doing these high efficiency buildings.
Yeah, you did one.
With the air barriers and stuff
Yep.
like that. You have to follow details down to exactly what they're telling you to achieve the performance of the building when it was all done.
Yeah. The people that are involved in that, it's amazing how much you can get help from the field. And when you get them in a room and talk to them, even though you yourself and I've done it in the past, when we look at a job, we break it down and we see where do we want to start first, second, third? Can we do 2 flow lines? Do we need 2 flow lines? Can we work in 2 places at once? One of them would be you have a civil package. Well, you can start out away from the building doing the civil while you're doing the structure and then finish next to the building. But you always call in your subs and ask them the questions, and they like to. You'll be surprised how much help you can get. And when you have their buy-in, they're going through it lickety split, and it makes it look easy for everybody.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of it is getting everybody together, sitting at a round table just like this, and say, okay, this is where we're going to start. We're going to go put the deep sewers in first. All the low stuff goes in, then we start working our way up.
Right.
Where do you need to be? Plumber, I got to get over that. Well, electrician, I got to get under that. So you get all these people talking together on a project, and it tends to make a good flow. Everybody knows where everybody's at, and you're not putting them out of sequence. There's a definite sequence in projects that needs to be followed if you want to do it efficiently. Again, back to saving everybody money.
Right. And when it's right down to it, the subcontractors are there to make money. Working as a team on the job site as a collective team,
Correct.
you can help them make money and even improve their production. So their boss is happy, they're getting good kudos, and they're feeling good about the job. And the one thing that you eliminate a lot of by those group works is mistakes, things that go in the wrong
Right.
spot.
That goes to looking ahead.
Yeah.
When I do this today, what's that going to affect me tomorrow? What's that going to impact? If I've got steel coming into the job, okay, well, just take it off the truck. Well, you just don't put it anywhere.
You don't put it
Or
anywhere.
you'd be right in the crane path. You could really mess your concrete guy up or
Yeah, how
something.
many
But
times have you walked out in the field and gone, "That's not what we
y-
talked about. What did you get out of the conversation?"
that's one of the worst things when you tell somebody to do it. Look, I want you to take the steel off. I want you to put it right there. And they look at you and they say, okay, we'll do it. Steel comes in, you see them, they're unloading it somewhere else. He goes, well, I'd rather put it over here. It's easier for me to get to. And I said, no, there's reasons that I told you to put it there. Right
Yeah.
here, a manhole goes 14 feet deep right here where you're putting the steel. And now I can't do it.
Yeah.
Had that happen once.
And then you get to convince them, well, by the way, since you got it in the wrong spot, you're going to have to move it because we can't
Exactly. Now
stop
you're
the
handling
work.
it twice
Yeah.
and you're losing money.
Yeah. And you're losing money. But in your time in this industry, do you feel like there was one spot that made a big break in your career path? Something that kind of like pushed you over the hump, like, yeah, I'm on this.
Yeah, it was definitely after I was worked for the architect and we built some banks in that motel I was telling you about. That was my first real job. I went to work for a very, very large concrete company, which introduced me to big construction here in the Central Florida area. And by working for them, there were superintendents and project managers of the general contractors that decided I would be better off working for them. And that's how I went from actual working into a superintendent role. Um, and back then, we would have multiple superintendents on the job. You'd have a general,
Yep.
and you had multiple you have an area superintendent. You would have a structural superintendent, a civil superintendent. I mean, you had different guys. Everybody was in charge of something else.
Yeah.
And then with my background with the concrete company, I was always in charge of concrete. I've built concrete plants on my projects before, right on the project
Batch
itself.
plants. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Those are always great.
Temporary batch plants. I built one time that was fed by a ship. We were in the Bahamas, and it came once every 12 days and dropped off a sizable amount of cement in our silos. And that by having that plant right on the project saved tons of time. So things like that you start as you get older and wiser, I guess. So, I'm not afraid to throw it out there. When I told them the first time that that's what we should do, they were like, well, that doesn't sound cost effective. I said, well, look at it both ways. And we did. And we partnered up with some concrete companies there and made it work. So,
I worked in Trinidad for almost 3 years, and we didn't have a batch plant. We had concrete delivery,
right.
and we were lucky to get, when you set up a pour, if you need $100 yards an hour, you want to have the rotation in the trucks. You know how long it takes to get to the plant and back.
Right.
Your testing lab is there. You know how long they take. So you know what your cycle is to get the truck into the pump, emptied, back, filled, and bringing you some more. We were lucky. You'd get 4 trucks, and they would come in the morning. You might not see them again till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's hard to work around something like that. Like I say, when you can control it, you have better scheduling.
Well, it's a batch plant.
Advances.
Yeah, it's the same thing when a lot of times when we set up projects, we go to the ironworking company that's going to fabricate the steel and show them what we have and let them get a mill steel purchase.
Right.
That way they purchase it one lump and then they fabricate it, and it all comes in one truck, and you don't have to wait or look around for it and stuff. Those are handy little things. Get another question, and just sitting here thinking about what you're telling me. What would you say your dollar value is you have put in place of work to date?
It's got to be upwards of 3-4 billion, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, 200 or $200 million high school, 400 million casino. Doesn't take long to hit $1 billion, so maybe upwards of 5 billion.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
You,
I'm sure you've got the same under your belt as many big projects as you've got.
oh yeah, I've done things from nuclear power plants to hospitals, hotels, jails, prisons, schools,
Yep.
tunnels under roads, aquatic features, containment areas, and um, I would say total to date would be hit the $5 billion
Right.
mark in place work.
Doesn't take
And
long.
yeah, and
Well, it
then
does take long, but
but you stop and think about all the work we've put in place. You know, when I was young, I worked on a project for a Holiday Inn, and there was me and this guy named Leroy. He was 76 years old. He taught me how to cut a compound miter with a handsaw.
hmm,
Taught me how to cut trim without a miter box. Taught me how to cut a lot of things. And he's always going around to me going, "Boy, your bulbs is bad." And so we were doing some work. One of the things we were doing was we were drilling a putting up a salad bar for Holiday Inn. So we would go in, gut the room, they'd refurbish it, we put new systems in. And in between, we were building salad bars and reefer mica tops. This guy was drilling like this.
Mm.
And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, you need to hold the drill straight." He threw the drill down and said, "You do it." And I looked up and there was Leroy. "Oh, I'm in trouble now." A little while later, we were reefer mica tops. When you reefer mica stuff, you put sticks down in the middle.
hmm
You glue both sides, you put it down, and you center it. And then once you center it, you pull the middle one out and get it tight and then walk yourself
Yep.
out. Well, I walked around the corner and the guys were holding the pre-cut circles going, flip. They were missing them. So, guys, that's not how you do it. Well, the guy said, "Well, you do it." So I got my sticks and started doing them. Next thing I know, I looked up, they're standing over there, and there's Leroy watching me.
Keeping an eye on you.
Oh yeah, this went on. There's a number of these that happened. Shorten this up a little bit, but we got done, and you know the green checks. Remember the pockets, the
Yep.
green checks. You'd always watch them come out. He handed all those guys green checks, but me, and he looks at me and he goes, "Boy, your bulbs ain't so bad." That's all he said to
That's
me.
all you needed.
No, that was all I needed.
Yeah.
But leading into that, Leroy took the time to teach me things on he was 76 years old. I was in my early 20s, but he was teaching me how to do things different ways. And as you mentioned before, math, he was showing me math it out,
Right.
lay it out, cipher it out, think it through, plan it, and do that. What do you think? What would you think would be a good way or some good advice to give to someone coming up in this trade on how to learn? Because I didn't graduate from college.
No, me neither.
When I was a kid, Dad said, "Come on, I'll get you and your brother on at Ford, and you'll have a good career." And I said, "No, Dad, I'm gonna go do buildings. I like buildings." And I worked my way. I went to apprenticeship school or vocational school. I went through some college classes and realized didn't have the money and had other opportunities spring up. But I had the fortune to find my way through and come up with things and had people that helped me. What would you say to someone who wants to learn and out of high school, wants to pick up the craft? What would you give them as advice?
Again, start on the bottom so you understand it from the bottom up. Sweep floors, tote lumber, whatever you got to do, and always work harder than the next guy. Because at some point they're going to weed the crew out, and as long as you're the hardest working guy on the crew, you'll always be there.
Yep.
So work hard, pay attention, and ask questions.
There
If
you
you
go.
don't, if you
Ask
don't
the
understand,
questions.
ask questions.
Yeah.
I was always asking, why do we put these trusses, at 2 foot on center? Well, it's got to meet the plywood. All right. So then we start. I mean, just ask questions. There's no dumb questions. A lot of dumb answers, but no dumb questions.
Right. And I think that was one of the things that, as I grew up, I had carpenters that wouldn't tell me anything, asking the question. And I was very fortunate. I had a lot of electricians and plumbers and millwrights and people that worked even in the power plants that you would ask them the questions. And they would, 85 to 90% of them would stop and explain it to you
Right.
because they wanted to see someone else come up in the trade. There's a gap between us and the next generation.
Huge.
A
We're
huge gap.
dinosaurs. We're both going to be extinct here pretty soon.
I feel like a dinosaur sometimes.
I do too.
But when you look at all of the timing and the stuff and the parts and pieces that we've been through, from learning how to do it, walking our way through the trades, asking the questions. We've made our mistakes. We've learned by making those mistakes. If you're not
Absolutely.
making a mistake, and the difference is in a mechanic or a person that's doing the trade is how you think yourself out of it. You will make a mistake.
Absolutely.
And I got to ask you this question: what was one of the worst ones you made?
I can honestly say one of the worst
And
mistakes
then how did you figure it out? I can
one
fix
of the
it.
worst mistakes I ever made didn't even have anything to do with the job. I was in my truck going to get some drinking water for the guys on a big job, had 500 guys on the job.
Yeah, yeah.
My crew, I had the concrete crew. And the general superintendent pulled up beside me going the other way and leaned out the window. He goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "Nowhere in particular." And that didn't go over
That was
well.
not the thing to
I learned at
say.
that point that was a learning uh, minute in my life. Think about what you're saying.
Yeah. You know,
As far as construction mistakes, sure, we're going to make them. You're going to have layout that doesn't work. You're going to have boards that are too short. You're going to have those things. But like I say, you learn from them and you remember those.
but it also taught you when you're looking at the drawings to know them. You can't know from soup to nuts right off the bat.
Right.
But if you're in the civil, you're in the structure, you're in the rough end, those are the key elements to hit on first and get used to and find and understand and know.
Absolutely. What's that plumber doing? What's that electrician doing? Why is
Right.
that pipe there? What does that do? Like you said, ask questions. If you that helps you as a general, knowing who can go first in this area or that area, to where we can work and coincide on both sides and meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Things like that, try to understand the whole job. I don't know everything there is to know about construction, but I know enough people that I can call if I don't know that I can get an answer.
Yeah, that's right. There's always somebody out there that can
Yep.
help you.
Somebody that we met along the way.
Yep. And they've tried it, done it, trued it, made a mistake,
Yep.
and
Blown it.
yeah. And that's one of the things I found in some of the generations I've been around is not asking. They just go ahead and try to do it.
Yep.
And there's no harm in picking up the phone and asking something. And one of the most impressive things that I ever got out of an individual or superintendent that was learning the craft was, I don't know about this. Can you walk me through it? Can you explain what needs
Absolutely.
to be done? Can you show me what this means? And of course, my favorite thing is always to say, if you look at the electrical, there is a notes page, and then there is a page reference for symbols. Flip between the two, and you can look and understand. It'll tell you and explain it to you. You don't have to be an electrician.
Right. And if you understand what you're trying to achieve, it helps you understand why I'm putting that conduit there and not there.
Right.
Or, why we're running this vent stack over that side because we're going to pick up 3 more toilets or something. It helps you understand what they're doing if you understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask. Like I say, I'm a lot of times asking the plumbers or electricians, why you put that box there? Or why you running the conduit overhead, not underground? Well, it's easier. I can do it later.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
One of my favorite things I learned was if you had an electrician on the job, he always wanted to put the home runs underground.
Mm-hmm.
He ran out for the home run, and in the home run is the wire that captures all the circuits and then brings it back to the panel to terminate at the breaker. And they always loved to put them under there. And I used to hate it because the time it took away from
Yep.
we couldn't get the slab down.
You'd
and
have
then,
slab prepped perfectly, and then he'd come in there and dig a ditch right across the middle of it.
Yeah, but then when it came into rough and
Yep.
in, it's
Made all the difference in the
made all the
world.
difference in the world. So you traded a little bit for here and there,
Right.
but it improved your rough end performance greatly, especially pulling wire and stuff.
Right.
That was a good one I always liked.
Yep. And again, they're doing it. They're going to go out there and do something. Good subs, they'll do something that you don't really get a grip on, but they're doing it for a reason. And it might be time saving, might be
Yeah.
money saving, but they're doing it for a reason. So just ask them, why are you doing that? They'll tell you.
And more than likely, they've been doing it enough.
Yeah.
They've learned just like we did that it don't work very well that way. Let's try it. We're going to try it. We're going to do it this way.
Absolutely.
And it's neat when you stand there and look out and watch them work, and it's a well-tuned bunch. It's really interesting. And when, some of the, I've watched ironworkers, when they're setting steel and you go around, you level the anchor bolts and
Right.
stuff to get the structure in. And I've set some columns, the H columns that had 1.5 inch flanges on them on huge footings that held multi-story steel
Right.
structures. And when you ask them, why did you set that one first? Well, how do you know that's how do you and they loved it. They love to
Yeah.
let you know. But I learned that when I started picking a sequence on the job on how I wanted to go through, now I understood their thought. I understood the plumber's thought, the electrician's thought. I could help put together a better schedule for the project.
Absolutely.
Like, when you're doing some projects, you've got CEP areas that they need to go first because they got to start up in order to finish. You may have a building that has a lot more work in it, and you've got to understand that, hey, Mr. Ironworker, you're going to go here and here and here. Same thing with your slab, your roughing, and,
Right.
and stuff.
I can open up a school with classrooms and no library, but I can't open it with a library and no classrooms. So you do the classrooms first, get them out of the way.
Yep, and you got to have the
Should have something come up.
and you got to have the HVAC on and the fire alarm and
Right.
all the life safety systems. They don't care.
And that goes back to the big picture. You got to understand the whole thing and how you're going to get to the end with your inspections, your buyout with the owner, and the turnover. It's all got to happen in a sequence. Again, we go back to sequencing.
Yep.
If after you've done it a few times, you understand. Like you said, I've got to have chilled water. Well, then I got to get the chilled water, all the chillers up, and those got to be running, which means I need big power to those chillers.
Yep. And you need permanent power because you can't run them on temp.
Yep.
So you got to be getting your main feeds in. Yeah.
Yeah. Just look ahead and try to dodge all. Again, it goes into looking in tomorrow. What am I going to do tomorrow?
Yeah. Tomorrow, next week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
And that goes to another good subject is look aheads.
Yep.
When we get a job, a
Kind
big
of like
job,
what we've done here.
there you go. The first thing we do is build a schedule, and you have to get people to buy into that schedule, and it's got to be built on knowledge, past knowledge of time and materials. A lot of stuff, lead time on materials. You might not get your chillers for 8 months, so you work it into. By the time those chillers come, they're ready to be set down, charged, and ready to go. Have everything else done in front of you. And the 3-week look aheads give you a day to day. This is where we're going to be tomorrow, boys, and this is where we need to be Friday. And if we're not here by Friday, we're working Saturday.
Right.
And
that's that weekly communication in the subcontractors meeting.
Absolutely.
And that's where you get them all in the room and you can ask them the questions, find out where they're going, how they're moving through, and what headaches do you have that you can help them with so that they can keep moving.
Yep. My 6:30 meetings in the morning with the foremans on the job. One of the things that I found in my later years is if I get when I get a subcontractor and we're scoping them out and we're bidding a job and we're looking at him, he's got to swear to me and promise that he's going to keep the same foreman on there the whole job.
Right.
Nothing worse than getting somebody in the middle of a job that hadn't been there to try to pick it up and run with it.
Yeah, and then you get in there, they lose parts, pieces, things get lost, forgotten, missed, and you get the surprises.
Those 6:30 meetings are the best. This is where we're going to be today, and a lot of times it'll flush something out. Like I'm gonna be digging a ditch over here. Well, I gotta lay some block over there. Okay, well let's figure this out. Who can go first?
Yes.
And then you work it out
Exactly.
until all of a sudden everybody goes out the door and hey, we got a problem. Work it out in that meeting in the morning.
And the jobs and it flows, and that there is something that really supports holding a good schedule.
Yes, it's got to flow.
It's got to flow, and you're addressing the challenges, the problems, the situations that come up. The schedules are made, but that doesn't show all the little intricacies of challenges that you see every day.
Because it changes. It's fluid.
Yeah, it's fluid. It's a guideline of how you're going to complete the job. The one thing you got to remember is that end date don't push out.
That's right. Exactly right. That's probably one of the hardest things to do on a big job is to maintain the schedule that you started with.
Yeah. And in solving the challenges where a subcontractor falls behind, how can you reset to let the other subs go and get them to work? So, well, I've enjoyed talking to you today.
I've sure been happy to be here today.
I would love to have you for another 30 minutes if you got time.
Absolutely.
And let's let's take a little quick break. I see the daylight coming
Daylight
up.
has broke.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
need to
let's go
check
out
the
and see the crane.
I need to check the job site. Let's go check it and come back and
I'm
do
looking
another
forward to
sit
it.
down.
Let's do it.
Well, this is Joe on the job site. This was our first edition. Thank you, and we will see you next week.